Being from England myself, just before we get into the wrestling talk, I have to mention it because I was genuinely a fan growing up. It Gladiators was a staple of my Saturdays night TV. So I just want to know what it's like to film it and to be a Gladiator in the Sky One reboot.
Oh, it was. But you have to think about it from my point of view too. I was 21 when I got when I got the part for that. Me and a few of my mates from wrestling went to the auditions. We got auditions, and most of us at the time, I think, well, because Tom Latimer went to the auditions. He got through. I think he got down to like the last 10, or something like that. And yeah, and then Barry, who had a short run in WWE as Mason Ryan, he ended up doing like the second season, and Dan Singh, who he had a short run in FCW. He's a good friend of mine, and he's doing really well in sports nutrition now. But he came on for the second season as well as Warrior. So it was cool to sort of get to experience it with some of my friends. But me and Tom were working full time for All Star Wrestling at the time for Brian Dixon. So we were doing Butlins. Like we were just wrestling at Butlins every week, every day for like throughout the summer. And so we went to those auditions kind of for a bit, sort of a laugh. Like obviously it was, we were just like, wow, they're bringing gladiators back. That's cool. But I don't think either one of us really thought, oh, we're going to get picked for this, because one, we sort of went, well, we're so young, we were both 21. And I think we both just sort of thought, like we're wrestlers and, there's going to be, especially when we got to the auditions, because there were guys there that I recognized from movies and like TV shows and muscle and fitness magazines and stuff. I'm like, I know that guy. I've seen him in like this. And I remember me and Tom just thinking, wow, we're never going to get this, And the auditions were so crazy. Like they before they even got to any of the sort of TV stuff, they put us through these really hard assault courses and stuff. And luckily for us, like at the time, because we were wrestling every day, we had really good cardio then. So we were just like, and next thing you know, we're sort of looking at our times and our scores and stuff, and we're going like, shit, we're in like the top 10. And then so we sort of get through they were brutal auditions. Like there was 50 guys there, I remember, and I remember they read out 25 names after about the first 3 hours and went, all right, go home. Like that's it, go. Yeah, you're done, go. Like then it came to that, and that was the moment where I think we all started looking at each other going, oh, all right, shit, maybe I do have a chance, because we knew there were 6 spots, and now it's like, well, now there's 25 of us, so it's like more than a 1 in 5 chance, so it's like, all right. Yeah. So then they got the cameras out, and they started kind of doing similar to what I had heard they would do at like WWE tryouts at that time, was they would just put a camera in your face and be like, talk, and some of these guys just, they fell apart. They went to pieces because they'd never done any of that stuff before. But like the wrestlers all were pretty good, we're all pretty prepared. And, next thing it was like, now we're down to the last sort of 15, 12, we start going, oh, okay. And, I remember when I got the call, at first they said, we want you to be a standby, which was like, it's like, it's nice, but at the same time you go, oh, like,
yeah, you'd rather like,
you're going to get paid and you're going to go and train and all that. And it was like, but you're not actually going to do it, and or you're going to do it if someone gets hurt. And it was so bittersweet, but at the time I was like, well, whatever,
sort of better than nothing, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I was making 40 quid a night on Butlin. So it was like, I'll take the payday. And then I got there, and then like, I get after like a day, they were just like, you're on the show. And, it was, I've never experienced anything like, first of all, it was just the most fun I've ever had. God, like what a great kid. Just, like Ian Wright is such a dude, like such a laugh. He was, he's like a big kid. Caroline Flack was awesome. Like I was really heartbroken when I heard about her death, because she was such a sweetheart and we got on really well.
Yeah.
And like we just, that whole crew were just, we were all pretty much, with the exception of obviously like the hosts, we were all new to TV. So we were all sort of in it together. We were all a big family. We ate together. We'd stay at the hotel together. We'd go out and party together. We'd do the shows. Everyone. It was just magic. It was so fun. And like, I've never experienced. I never obviously won't ever again in my lifetime. But it was like one of those really weird instances where like overnight I was, people were recognizing me, like because they did all the publicity and stuff all on the same day. So they had like I remember we went to do the photo shoots and stuff at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in like the Docklands in London, so that no one would see us and like no one knew who we were anyway. But they wanted to make sure that nothing got sort of leaked or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'll never forget, like this, whatever day it was, there was just this like one day where they said, okay, this is the day that everything goes out and everything gets released or whatever. And I had to change my phone number. Like, my phone
just blew up that much.
Just so overnight. I mean, just so quickly. Like, people I hadn't heard from years, just like, I've just seen you on a billboard in like Newcastle. I've just seen you at a bus stop in like Liverpool. Like, are you a gladiator now? Like, what the hell? Like, what happened? And it was just like that. So it set me up for a lot of my career, because I was so young, but at the same time, I knew enough even then to know, like, okay, this is a really good opportunity for me to use this platform to sort of get where I want to go.
Yeah.
Which was sort of get in front of, which was to get to America and, to follow, to be a big time pro wrestler. And just, those 2 years, like 2008, 2009, I mean, were just nonstop for me. Every day I was just doing something. And it was like, by the time I'd finished shooting Gladiators, I was already signed to TNA.
So it was like, that quick.
By the time I'd done season 1 and season 1 was airing, and I had already signed on for season 2, and I had signed on to do Panto. I between, like, while that was in that summer, was when TNA reached out to me. So it was like I went for. I mean, it's funny because I remember talking to the boys at Gladiators and being like, they were all saying, so what is it that so you want to go to America and you want to go to WWE, and I said, yeah, or TNA, or just want to get, that's the way you got to go if you want to make money and be successful. And it was just funny because the way it all worked out, I got featured in a magazine, and that magazine happened to be the first time that AJ Styles was on the cover. So it was the first time that a TNA guy had been on the cover instead of a WWE guy. So TNA was sort of paying closer attention to it, because they were like, wow, this is really big, for us in the UK to be featured like that. And I was in that issue. So then they go through it, and like the two big stories were AJ and me. And it was, so then they're like, well, who's this guy? And because obviously their growth in the UK at the time, they wanted a UK guy, and they wanted someone who they could sort of who they thought they could get behind and sort of push as a serious sort of talent. And and so everything just worked out. It was just one of those things where all the timing of all that was just right. And I know Kurt Angle always tells me this story that he came over to do some media in London, and his version of it is that he knew that they were looking for a UK talent as well. And he said he was in his hotel, and he put on the TV and Gladiators was on, and he saw me and called the office and said, there's this guy on this show Gladiators. I don't know if he's a wrestler or not, but if he's not a wrestler, like, he talks just like a wrestler. Like, he cuts promos just like a wrestler. And they were like, is it this guy? And they sent a picture like, yeah, that's him. And they go, yeah, we signed him. So it was like, he sort of went, well, that's so crazy. So you know, like I said, it gave me everything. You know, it sort of it was a tremendous learning experience, obviously, but also just a huge amount of fun. Like, great, you know, I've made lifelong friends from that show. Made, you know, had some really cool opportunities to do things that a kid from Norfolk would never be, you know, would never have had the opportunity to do. I mean, went to some parties, like just some, you know, crazy like celebrity parties. I remember like going to a party with like Lindsay Lohan and stuff, and just being like, what is happening? Like,
I'm just
how
a kid
am I
from
on the guest
Norfolk.
list
Like,
for this? Yeah, like how, like what am I doing here? You know, just you know, just being around like all these what I would call like genuine celebrities, you know, and everyone just being so cool and being like, oh, Gladiators, like, oh, you're that guy from Gladiators. Oh, I love your shit. You know, like you're killing it. You know,
like they're reaching out to you as well, just like, oh, mate, I'm so good in
like
that.
I remember, like I was a huge fan of the Friday Night Project, and I remember like I met Justin Lee Collins at like a Sky party. He was doing something for Sky at the time. And I walked up and I was like, I am such a huge fan of yours. And he went, shut up, I'm a huge fan of yours. Like, I was trying to, like, I wanted to come and meet you. Like, oh, you know, I love the show. Like, and it was like, God, this is just nuts, you know. Like, so, and, you know, I think what it did was it sort of gave me a great amount of confidence. Like, I never thought of Gladiators as going to be this. I never thought, oh, this is going to be my career. You know, this is going to be like a long-term thing. I kind of knew that it was going to have a shelf life.
Yeah,
like I knew it was going to have this sort of nostalgia thing, and it would, you know. And I thought to myself, I was disappointed that it only went 2 seasons. I kind of thought we might get 4 or 5, but I thought, you know, it's not going to be like the 90s where it's going to become this like major sort of staple of television. But I thought, you know, but at the end of the day, I got everything I could out of that. I mean, I squeezed every drop out of that opportunity, and you know, and I sort of, I'm lucky that I got that chance to do it when I was that young, because I was so full of energy and like not, I had the right mentality at that age, you know, to just be like, say yes to everything, just like jump in with both feet, like, you know, just go for it, like, you know, be a little bit brash, a little bit cocky, and just sort of, you know, make a big splash. And I did, and it obviously led to all these other opportunities, which I then, you know, built on, and, you know, built my whole career off, really.
It paid off as well, because I mean, you could tell that he's enjoying it, and you sort of you were cutting promos. You basically were like, the top hill on Gladiators. You know, it was just, I mean,
this is a funny story. So they're sort of going through everyone's like sort of characters, and like I said, at first I was just going to be a standby, and then they called me and said, you're in, like you're in the cast. So it was like, so then I get there and they go, you're in, and your name's going to be Oblivion. And I was like, all right, that's cool, I can work with that, like, you know, whatever, cool. And so I remember we had this one day with the producers, because, you know, most of the preparation for the show is obviously all the training, like to actually, because the whole point of it is you're supposed to be really good at these events.
Yeah.
And like the contenders are supposed to be,
like, you've got to be better than them.
Yeah, you're supposed to be way better than them, even though you both train for the same amount of time, you know. And it's like, so we're training like all day, every day. I mean, we get up and we're training at these like army barracks, and we're like up at like crack of dawn, you know, hang tough, duel, like powerball. I mean, just nonstop all day, you know. And I remember, like, you know, it's been like a super hard day. Everyone's exhausted. Everyone's like, I'm pretty sure that the reason I tore my bicep years later in Mexico was because of all the hang tough and all that stuff. I'm glad, because I mean, we had guys working on us like morning to night on our elbow. Everyone had tendonitis in their elbows, and you know, major, because just all the, you know, just because it's so too intense. And so we're all like getting worked on and sort of eating, and, you know, they took amazing care of us. I mean, it was like, you know, everything you could want was all there. And the producers came in and they said, okay, right, we need to talk to everyone about your characters, right? So everyone's kind of like, oh, cool, this is, you know, this is interesting. And they go, okay, you know, and they're sort of going through some of the people, and then they go, and it was so funny because Louise was the name of the producer, and she goes, she teed it up like it was this real sort of serious thing. She goes, okay, so here's going to be the difficult part. One of you, she's talking to the boys, she said, one of you has to be a bad guy, right? And like all the other guys are just like horrified. They're like, oh, I don't want to be a bad guy. Like, I don't want people to boo me, and I don't want to be, and I'm like, me, please, like
this guy.
I'm like, I literally threw my hand up, like in my mind, I thought everyone's gonna jump at that.
Yeah.
You know, and the rest of them were all like, sort of, you know, pretending to look at their phones and like, you know.
I didn't hear that now.
Yeah. And I just go like, me, and she just looked at me and was like, really? And everyone else looked at like, and I was sort of like, David McIntosh, who was Tornado, he's still a mate of mine. We still stay in touch to this day. He's like nodding his head, like he knew, you know, like because he was a little bit like that. Like he knew wrestling, and like he was a wrestling fan. So he just, and like he looked and he was just like, yes. It's like, yes, that's the one. He's the one to do it. And I just remember being like, yes, I want that. Like, let me. And Louise was like, oh, well, that was easy. I thought we were going to have to sell someone on it. I went, nope, that's me all day.
What were the other guys' reaction to that as well? Because they were all like, and there's you like, yeah, I'll be the heel. Or bad guys, they would say.
They were all just like laughing, kind of like, what? Like, really? And I remember like Sam, who was ALDIS, like he couldn't let it go. He was just like, but I don't understand. Like, you want, people are going to boo you. Like, people aren't going to like you. And I was like, yeah. I said, Sam, it's not about people not liking you. It's you become the guy that they love to hate. I said, it's not real. Do you know what I mean?
It just wasn't registering with him, sort of.
Right. I was like, they're not booing the guys, booing the booking. You know, like, and he was just like, I can't believe it. Like, like, you know, because he was just, you know, he just wasn't from that world. He was, you know, he was a bodybuilder, and you know, he worked in an office. So he was just like, the idea of like someone booing him was just, you know, unfathomable. You know, and I was just like, nope. But it was funny because after, like, within a few episodes, like, I'm sort of the standout kind of character on the show. And then it was like every guy that came in after that all tried to be a heel, and they would be like, no, like, you don't do that. They'd be like, no, we got that already. You know?
I didn't realize there was like there's so much into it, and like they were like everyone was sort of no at first, and then everyone was like, fuck's sake, I wish I was the heel now. And you literally relished it as well, man. Honestly, like, you're such a dick on the show, and I mean that as a compliment, by the way.
Yeah. I had so much fun. I mean, I would like, Ian loved it. Like, Ian, like, I would never talk to Ian. I never, like, you know, I knew that Ian Wright understood. Do you know what I mean? And like, he's a, you know, genuine celebrity. And it was like, but I knew, like, just from talking to him, I knew that he was cool, and he got it. So it was like, I would do stuff. I would like rip his outfit apart, be like, "Oh, this," like, you know. I said, "I lost because I was distracted by your terrible outfit," you know, like, or whatever. And, you know, Ian would just be like, "Well, no way, you can't say that." This is, you know, like, and then I would come out, and, you know, sometimes the producers would be like, "Did you clear that with Ian before?" And Ian would be like, "Shut up! Like, that was great!" Like, you know. And then these guys would be like, "Why? Like, I can't believe you said that to Ian." I'd be like, you guys don't get it." Like, and then Ian would come back and be like, "Oh, dude, that was so great!" Like, ripping on my outfit, like, "Oh man," like, you know, they would go crazy. Like, Ian wanted to do more with me. Like, sometimes they had to like say, no, you can't do that, because Ian would be like, "Oh, I want to fight him. Like, let's do this. Like, let's get into a fight," you know, and all this stuff. But they'd be like, no, you know.
If TNA had been clever in 2009, 2010, and they booked you against Ian Wright in London, you would have been the biggest heel, mate.
Oh, dude, can you imagine if they had Ian? Yeah, they could have had Ian come in, like, be a special guest, something or other, at, like,
and just like knock you out at the end.
Been great.
Biggest pop of the night.
Yeah, and he would have done it too. He would have done it.
Oh, I love seeing him.
100%,
man. I just want to talk briefly about what made you a fan of wrestling, what got you into wrestling, and how you discovered the Wrestling Academy. Was it Dropkicks in Purfleet?
that was where I went after.
Was that after the Knights family, wasn't it?
Yeah. I started with the Knights, and you know, they broke me in for sure. Like, I always credit Ricky and Julia with sort of breaking me in. You know, the only reason I started going to drop kicks really was because the Knights, like, they had their school, but it wasn't regular. Like, they would do weekend camps sort of whenever they could fit them in. But, you know, they had their own holiday camps, and like they would do all these pontins, and they had their own shows and stuff. Especially in the summer, they were really busy. So, you know, I was sort of like, I want to practice more. I want to learn more. I want to go to training, you know, because I was a sports kid. You know what I mean? My dad was a rugby player. I played football, you know, to a pretty decent, like, county level, and like, you know, tennis and swimming at, like, you know, national level and stuff like that. So I was sort of, my mind was sort of ingrained in the sort of go to practice, you know, like training. And so I was, you know, it was more like, it wasn't that I wanted to sort of not train with them. It was just frustrating because I wanted to do more training.
Yeah.
So then we found drop kicks, and man, it was such, back then it was such a good school then, because Frank, who ran it, who recently passed away, he was, you know, one of my favorite people in the business. So, you know, and he just, like, he would make sure that there were always loads of different really good quality veteran wrestlers coming in to sort of take the class. So like any given week you could go down there and, you know, you'd be doing a class with like Doug Williams, you know, or Johnny Storm would take a class, and then like Mel Stewart would take a class, like, you know, Wayne Bridges would take a class, like, you know, Mick McManus came down once, and we were just like, whoa, you know, like it was, you know, you
Such
really got a real education of where, you know, of British wrestling's roots, because you have to remember at this time, this would have been about 2005 or 6, maybe. It wasn't like it is now, where you had like NXT UK, and you had all these young British wrestlers who were sort of paying homage to Johnny Saint, and, you know, and you didn't have, like, the WWE Network weren't doing documentaries on Adrian Street and sort of, you know, and recognizing like British wrestling. Like, it was all this obscure kind of forgotten world. Like, everyone was coming in and just trying to be like American wrestlers.
Yeah.
And so we would, you know, we would go. I honestly think that whole movement that really changed, that really sort of brought British wrestling back. I think a lot of it started at dropkicks, because if you look at the guys who were at dropkicks, myself, Shah Samuels, Marty Skrull, Stu Bennett, you know, like Terry Frazier, like Paul Robinson, there was a lot of guys who went to that school.
All talented, by the way, like all guys I've seen live and just I absolutely adore.
Right, and because we all got a wide education of the British style and American styles. Like, even I remember the first time I met Dory Funk, he came to one of the Impact tapings in Orlando in 2009. I was, you know, super green, but I think I may have just started the tag team with Doug. I may have just started British Invasion. And Dory Funk Jr. pulled me aside and he goes, I really like the way you blend the British and American styles. It's really great to see, you know. And I was like, cool. Like, he noticed that. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying it was, you know, like guys like Marty did it to a whole different level, like incorporating more of the British style stuff. But when you look at guys like Pete Dunne today, and you know, Jack Gallagher, or, you know, like all kinds of the guys who were sort of known for kind of using that British style, and incorporating it. What I think a lot of that started when they saw, like, a lot of that came from drop kicks, because a lot of the guys that were first doing that on the independents came from drop kicks, and then other people started going, oh, that's really cool, you know. And then, like, when, you know, Marty really got the villain thing going, it was like people started going, wow, it felt like it was new, but it wasn't new. It was just really old. And he was just using stuff that no one had done for 20 years. or 30 years. And in some ways, it's kind of similar, I guess. In some ways, it's sort of a bit like what we've done with the NWA, where we do a lot of stuff that people go, wow, that's really different and new and cool. And really, it's actually just stuff that hasn't been done for like 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, definitely.
But that was drop kicks, at that time, talk about sort of planting seeds. But, I got from going to drop kicks, and it wasn't, it was a long way for me. I had to drive it was like 3.5 hours, from Norfolk to basically London. Right?
Yeah, it's literally like just outside of Lakeside.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, it's Lakeside. Yeah, it's literally Lakeside. So we would do that every Sunday. We would all pile in like one of our shitty beat up cars, a little Peugeot or Fiat or whatever, and drive down to Purfleet, and we'd but it was like, we loved it. It was like an adventure for us. Like, we couldn't wait. We'd leave like first thing in the morning. We'd drive down and we'd like plan where we're going to stop. Right, we're going to get like Mickey D's on the way, and we're going to, you know what I mean?
McDonald's breakfast. That's the one.
Hell yeah, Breakfast of Champions. We get our McMuffins on the way down, and get there and we'd have like they'd have this whole matted area where we just did and we got taught how to shoot. Like, John Hall was there, and John Hall was like, Finn Balor can tell you about him too, because he was involved with like Hammerlock and stuff like that. But he was like well-known sort of shooter. So he would kind of grab you and stretch you and be like, here, if someone tries to scurf you, this is what you do, you give them a bit of
I'm not laughing at the stories, the accents.
And all this sort of stuff. Like, if someone tries to do that, just cross-face them. And, so he taught you all this stuff, because in his, he came from that era where it was like,
it was real.
Take liberties with you, and then you'd be hearing all these stories like, he used to be a debt collector for like these gangsters and stuff, and it'd be like, oh, shit. So, but you learn from all these different people, and so I think it just set me up, because when I, like, for example, like I said, Doug would come sometimes to help train. Doug was one of the, Doug came down, and Doug at the time, we all looked up to him, because he was going all over the world. He's going to Japan, he's going to Ring of Honor, and he's like making really good money for Noah. He's going to Germany, he's booked all over the place. And he was like, I was 17, 18, and he got me booked for other promoters and said, hey, you should book this kid. And hey, and one of them, this guy, John Fremantle, who was a well-known promoter, he called me and said, Doug Williams recommended you. I said, oh, wow, that's really amazing. Thank you. And he's like, yeah, in fact, he said, you may as well wrestle him. And I was just, oh shit. Like, I got to wrestle Doug, so like I got to wrestle Doug, and, in a rounds match, and like that, that helped sort of, that helped get the word around a bit. Like, oh, this kid wrestled Doug Williams in a rounds match, and it was really good, and, Doug could have a good match with a Broom. So it was like, I just sort of let him, you know what I mean? And it was just all sorts of just little things like that. And it was just funny how things came full circle a few years later when he, when we got put in the tag team and stuff. But yeah, no, and then I got, everyone would say to me, you need to work for Dixon. You need to go work for Brian Dixon. You need to work for All Star. If you're gonna work full time in wrestling in Britain, that's the safest place to go, because he's, Brian was running 250 shows a year when I went to wrestle for him. Like, I remember when I came over to do Harley Race's camp, and like Joe Hennig was at that camp, and Sam Shore, who's Dexter Loomis in NXT, is one of my best friends. Like, we're all sitting around, we're hanging out, we're chit-chatting about stuff, and everyone's talking about like what they do for a real job. Oh, I'm a this, I'm a that, or I work at a gym or whatever. And they said, what about you? And I said, well, I'm a wrestler. And they were like, what, that's it? And I'm like, well, yeah, I wrestle for Brian Dixon. I work for All Star Wrestling. And I pulled up my emails, like, on my BlackBerry. That's how long ago that was.
I missed that phone.
I pulled up my BlackBerry, and I was like, yeah, here's my bookings for like next month. And they were just like, what? Like,
you can actually do this?
It was just like every day, like, you're here this day, then here, then here, then here. Brian would just send you your booking sheet, and you'd have like, it was like old school sort of territory almost. You got your booking sheet. All right, here's what you're doing for the next month. you know, sometimes you wouldn't even get that. Sometimes you just get it like the week of, like you get it on Monday. Okay, here's what you're doing this week, you know. And it was like they couldn't believe it. But you know, I was just very, very blessed because it was like a, you know, massive opportunity. I got to work with so many. I mean, I got to work with Daniel Bryan and like PCO and, you know, Gangrel, like, you know, because he would bring over all these guys, and I got to work with them all, you know, in different ways, either, you know, singles or in tags, whatever. And I, you know, just wrestling every night and just sort of finding yourself
learning
and
it,
getting,
but different people and
getting comfortable, man, just getting into it.
No, that's good, man. I do remember some of those shows, but I used to go when I was really young, and I remember like they have like fake LOD. And,
Oh yeah.
fake Undertaker.
Hey, if you saw a tribute LOD, it was a good chance that it might have been Ricky Knight.
Oh, Paige's dad.
Yeah, because he would do that sometimes. He would do Legend of Doom.
Oh, dear. That's one way to get around copyright, isn't it?
Legend of Doom.
What was it like for you to be the TNA World Champion? Because you got to be AJ Styles, and you was going about 3-4 months run with the title. As a fan, I was so happy to see you win the champion as a fellow Brit. Just to see, you know, someone do it. We've been waiting for Davey Boy and William Regal, you know, etc., etc. But I feel the booking was you was able to win all these matches clean, and then after that, you know. So just basically want to know what was it like for you personally to be the champion.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You pretty much nailed it. Like you pretty much said that it's funny because I just had a conversation with John Gaburick just very recently, where we kind of buried the hatchet about a lot of this stuff because it was, you know, it was just one of those weird things that never really, you know, that we never really resolved, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we just look back at that stuff now and we just sort of go, just unfortunate timing, right? Just it coincided with AJ leaving the company. So that was that situation just sort of left such a sour taste in people's mouths that I sort of became associated with it because it was like they decided, okay, we're going to go with new, we're going to go with youth, and Magnus is the right guy to go with. And I believe I probably was the right guy at that point in time. You know, to sort of, if you were going to not, you know, obviously you had Kurt Angle and you had Jeff Hardy, you had Bobby Roode, you had all these guys who would have been much better at being world champion at that point.
But it's something new.
But if you're right, but if you're going with someone new, you know, someone who hasn't been champion before, like looking at it back then, I probably was the best candidate out of people who hadn't been champion before. You know, it's just unfortunate that then it, like, so quickly it just had this really bad stigma, you know. And that's what John and I talked about, because it was like I was so young, you know, still I wasn't prepared for the politics. You know, like it's no secret that, like I said, it was between me and Bully Ray, I think. And obviously then, you know, so then you know you've got one enemy, you've got one guy who's kind of, and he's got much more influence in the office and much more say and much more stroke. So like suddenly there's all these little tricks and all these little kind of things being pulled on you, and you know, so then you start. And again, I wasn't, if it was me now, like I'd totally know how to deal with it. But at 27, I'm like emotional and I'm very, you know, sort of reactive to everything. I didn't know how to handle it. Wasn't quite ready for the spot.
Yeah.
And so it's a bittersweet thing, because obviously winning the title meant you know, a great deal to me, because at that point I'd been with the company like 4 years, and it did mean a lot. I think without question, the best memory taken from that period was the reaction from British fans. Like, I didn't, I'd lived in America for 4 years at that point, and now I've lived here for 10 years. But at the time, I remember sort of thinking, I wonder if they'll even care, because
we did.
I didn't go. And then I remember Jeremy Borash, JB was always so in tune with the UK fans. He was so, like, he knew that there was something special there. And JB organized like a fan party at I think it was called the Garage in London, like a gig venue.
Oh, High Wilston, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, and he was like, are you going home for Christmas? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, great, we're going to do it. Let's do a fan party, and we'll do it on like, December the 29th or something, like whatever it was, right? And I remember thinking, like, oof, I wonder if anyone's even going to show up, and like, it sold out in like 5 minutes, the place was packed. And like, I remember coming out and just people just, it was just this like massive, like they everyone had sort of put the storyline and the the character stuff to one side, and they were just like this massive sort of. And I remember just that was like my favorite moment of the whole thing, because I was just like, this is like, it means a lot to and I mean, Stu Bennett texted me. He was in WWE at the time, as he was doing he was Wade Barrett, he was working for WWE, so like he texted me. I think Drew texted me, Sheamus, I think, text me, and they're all like, shit, man, you did it, what I mean, good for you, like, first British like world champion of a major promotion. Like, the guys who kind of, like, it meant more to me that guys like Doug and Stu and Drew were acknowledging it as like, they, like, I would never want to say it about myself. Like, I say it in promos, in character, right? But I would never say it as a shoot. But like, they were like, you broke the glass ceiling, I mean, because I remember for shoot, Vince Russo saying to me, probably 2 years before that, in one of our many conversations, where I'd be like, Vince, I want more of a push, or I want more, I want to do more. I want more of an opportunity. He'd be like, oh, bro, what do you want to be, world champion? He's like, bro, you're a Brit. They're never going to put the world title on a Brit. And that was, Vince said that. And, obviously, it wasn't like I proved him wrong, because he was involved, at the time. But it was like, it was gratifying to me to because in my mind, I was always like, I loved doing the British invasion stuff, but there was always a part of me that was going, I don't want to do this forever, because I don't want to be pigeonholed as this like cartoon character.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be taken serious, because I think I could be world champion. You have to think that, And so to get there, and then to sort of get the push in 2013, and most of that year was a babyface, which was not easy for me, because it's not my natural, demeanor. But to get over, like, to, I mean, I remember we were doing TVs on the road then, and we, obviously got a big babyface reaction in England when I first came back as a babyface. But then I was like, now we're going to really see, because now we're going to, Louisville or whatever. And it'd be like, but sure enough, it just kept coming. Like, everywhere I went, I would, I would get, and I mean, I'm not kidding, George. I would, every week when I was a babyface, I would be like, is this going to be the week where I walk out and get booed? Like, I never had that full confidence of like, they're going to like me. I kept thinking, like, any minute now they're going to show me, and so, I mean, I remember the worst one, some of the worst anxiety I ever felt in my career was, I don't know if you remember this, but when they announced me as the fourth member of the Main Event Mafia, as the new.
I remember that, yeah.
And it was in Las Vegas. It was the middle of summer. It was like 120 degrees outside. And like a week before those shows, David Lagana called me and said, you might want to go and buy some suits, which is funny because obviously like now people, I'm sort of known for, you know, wearing the suits and everything. But he was like, you might want to go buy some nice suits. Like, you know, and I mean, and he goes, you know, I mean, like real nice, like don't, you know, not off the rack. It's okay, why? He goes, because you're going to be in the main event Mafia. And I just went like, what? Like, oh my God, like that's a death sentence. Like they're never going to accept me in that, you know, like, are you fucking joking? Like Sting, Kurt Angle, Joe, and me.
I love that's
you
your
know,
reaction.
like,
It's not like, yeah, it's not like, no, they're gonna boo me.
right. I remember thinking like, no, I was just getting good. I was getting some momentum, and I was kind of like that, you know, upper middle baby face. And I was like, I'm good here. Like that's where I need to be right now. Like I'm Tito Santana, you know, like leave me alone. And, you know, and they were like, no, you're going to the main event Mafia. And I'm like, oh no, you know, and then like the way they teed it up too, I was just like, they really like, who's the fourth member going to be? We're going to announce it tonight, you know. And I was just going like, oh my God, like this is going to be the biggest fight in church ever. And I remember standing there, and I just remember I was like dressed nice, I got the suit on and everything, like I looked the part. And I remember standing there, and Bruce Pritchard sitting there with the headset on, and I think Hogan and probably Matt Conway and Dixie. And I was standing there, and I remember like, here we go, you know, Sting's out there, Kurt's out there, Joe's out there. And Kurt just goes like, the fourth member is Magnus. And it was like this weird pause for a second, and I went, oh fuck, it's crickets. And then suddenly everyone went, oh, like, you know, and I walk out, and then I got a pop. And I remember just being like, oh, thank God. Like, because I knew I could cut a good promo.
Yeah.
But I was just like, it doesn't matter if there's no reaction before I even get the mic. And I walked out, and I get the, you know, it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was like a huge pop or anything, but I got a good enough reaction where I was like, okay. And I, you know, I cut a good promo and got a good reaction. And it was like, I came back and you know, Bruce was like, great fucking job. And I remember, you know, because obviously it took me a while to sort of win Bruce over and stuff like that. You know, arguably still happen to this day, but it was like, I remember that day, even Bruce was like, good job, you know, good shit. So I was just like, okay. But, you know, like, so going through that whole year and then getting to the end and winning the title, it's like, yeah, even though the booking got screwy really quickly and obviously it didn't go the way I had hoped it would go at all. And obviously like following that was just kind of shit. And, you know, other than the one thing I say again about TNA, I never complained about the way they treated me, you know, on a business level, because shortly after I lost the title, I got a raise. You know, it was like they, you know what I mean? Like they always took care of me. And so it was like, because I remember, you know, not long after I lost the title, I was just like, I just got into that bad headspace where I was just like, fuck it, I don't care, whatever, you know? And I, you know, and I apologized to Big for that, because I was just like, that was unprofessional, but it was just like, I felt like everyone had given up on me. Yeah. And it was just like, you know, it was just one of those things. It was just it's hard when you feel like you don't have the support of the office anymore. You just start going like, what's the point? And also, again, for me, I kind of knew, based on what they were paying me then, I kind of knew that they weren't going to match it when my contract came up. Yeah. It was kind of like, you know, I said, so a lot of, you know, there was, I don't want to say, it wasn't like that whole period was miserable. Like there were some really good points in there. Like one being the fact that there was finally like, I was the world champion, and a bunch of the guys on the card were like my friends. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't like the young guy with all the other, you know, I wasn't tagging along with like, I wasn't riding in the car with all guys who had been around longer than me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Now we were riding in the car, and it's like me and EC3 and Spud and Robbie and Jesse and Zima. You know what I mean? So it was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm like the little leader of our crew now. Do you know what I mean? And we had so much fun. I mean, we went to New York, we went all over the country doing all the house shows, and we're going out and going to all these crazy places, and getting drunk and going out and partying and whatever. So it was like,
nice.
Yeah, like I mean, we went to Japan for a show, and me and Robbie are sitting there in the in the hotel. We've been out partying in Roppongi, and like every story you've ever heard about Roppongi is true. It's just like one of the greatest places in the world to go hang out and party and stuff. And we were just sitting there in the in the Tokyo Dome Hotel, and just we were just sitting there like shit, like. And Robbie was like, "Dude, you're the world champion." You know what I mean? I was just like, "I know, it's fucking crazy." So it's like, don't get me wrong. We had some like really cool memories from that period. But it's like people obviously, they want to talk about like
the bad stuff, but
yeah, well, because that's the part that they saw on TV, so they don't, but I look back, and this was part of the conversation that I just had with John Gaburik with Big, was like, he goes, I look back at TNA and it's more positive than negative, and I said, me too, like hell yeah, like we had a great time, like I ask anyone. Well, first of all, look at that roster, and it's like me and Big. I joked about it with Big. I said, "Shit, you could take a TNA like 2012 house show card now, and it was pretty much a WrestleMania." Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy, Sting, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Bobby Roode. Me and James Storm. I mean, it was like it was
so much talent. So it's like
a who's who.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, well, Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley, like that was an Impact main event, from about 5 years. That was an Impact main event like 5 years ago, and now it's WrestleMania, and like, so, you're right. TNA gets a very unfair treatment in the eyes of like the sort of wrestling aficionados, but in reality, it was like. I think it's evidence now when you see the numbers that the podcasts do that talk about TNA, and like with Conrad, Eric and Bruce, and now Jeff Jarrett. It's like, the TNA ones, people are kind of like now, because like our generation, we're sort of, now it's like, shit, man, I want to talk more about TNA. Like
there was an audience. Like I went to see TNA live, I loved it.
And also, like for the people who came along, and the fans who have come along in the last like 4 or 5 years who just missed like the real peak of TNA, like they go back and see some of this stuff and go, wait, what? Like they were in arenas and they had who was on the show?
Would sell out Wembley, Wembley Arena.
I've had people come to me and be like, dude, I just watched the match. I just watched something with you on from TNA where you wrestled like AJ Styles. It was so good. Oh my God. And I'd be like, yeah. And it wasn't even that good. Like I was still green, you know what I mean? But it's like, I got to work with Jeff Hardy. I got to work with AJ. I got to work with Joe. I got to work with Kurt Angle. You know what I mean? I got to work with the who's who. It, again, just set me up for the rest of my career because I got to work with all these great talent.
How does it feel to be a bit of a pioneer when it comes to getting a retro Hasbro style figure by Cello Toys?
Oh, that was cool. Yeah. When they reached out to me, Charles was, he's a good dude and a fellow Brit, so that always helps sweeten the deal for me. And I appreciated that they were sort of honest and forthcoming and were just like, look, we're a small company and we're just getting started and we want to start with you. And it was, it was a really good deal, and we all made some money off it. So I'm really pleased, and the fact that the figure's been so well received and people are so into it, and we got to have some fun with making like the silly like retro commercial for it and stuff like that. It's cool, man. I like it when deals like that come together and are easy to do, and everybody makes money and everybody's cool, and like and everyone sort of comes out the other end and go, that was great, and that was one of those.
Because I've noticed since like you signed on with them and it's come out, multiple companies have sort of been getting into the retro style figures, so you're sort of ahead of that. And it's a really good figure, mate. It's really good. So after TNA and Global Force, because I know you did return to TNA as well briefly, but what would happen next is you set your eyes basically on the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, the rebirth of the National Wrestling Alliance. So before you went to NWA, sort of, it was kind of in the back of a lot of wrestling fans' mind. If you sort of mentioned NWA, a lot of them would have said maybe, okay, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and Harley Race. But if you would have asked them who had been the last few champions, not a lot of fans would tell you. So I just want to know what is it about the £10 of gold that makes it so special to you personally, and essentially, why did you want to get involved in the NWA?
Well, people sometimes reference this and they sort of go, well, you know, Billy and Nick had a relationship from TNA, but we really didn't, because when he came in, it was like right as I was leaving. So we sort of interacted a little bit, and we worked together on maybe sort of 2 or 3 episodes of television, but that was it.
Yeah.
But fortunately, those particular interactions were good enough, you know, where he sort of remembered it. And then he had his, you know, run with TNA, and then he, you know, that whole thing happened. And I'd been with Jeff trying to do Global Force, because like as soon as I finished with TNA, Jeff was like, hey, come with me, we're going to do this Global Force wrestling, it's going to be great. And obviously that, you know, that didn't really pan out.
Yeah.
So I was really getting to this point where I was a bit disenchanted, because I was going like, well, WWE pretty much told me where to go.
Really?
And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to ask. If you don't want to talk about it.
You know, it is what it is. Like, I reached out and they were just like, no. So I just kind of went, oh shit, okay. And then, you know, so I was kind of like, okay, now what? I'm sort of trying to make something happen, and I'm sort of talking a little bit to Ring of Honor, and I'm sort of, you know, trying to see if I can get something going there, and, you know, obviously working independence and trying to sort of, and it was around that time that Marty was really doing well with the villain stuff, and he was sort of changing the game a little bit for everyone, because he was independent, he wasn't signed anywhere. But, you know, next thing you know, he's booked in like New Japan, and then he signs Ring of Honor, and it's like, and he, you know, he created all this himself with vignettes and whatnot. So, and, you know, he was just like, well, just do your own. Like, I think he changed the business, because like now guys make their own vignettes. Like that's how I found Ricky Starks and got him booked for TNA, for NWA. And, you know, now he's in AEW, and like, good for him. But it's like, because he made these kick-ass vignettes, and I was just like, whoa, this guy gets it. Like, I'd never even seen him wrestle, but I was like, hey, anyone who makes that level of effort, like, it must be half good, you know?
Yeah.
And he was. So it was, and so I was doing that too. I'd started making, I was using the same guy that had done the villain vignettes. And I was doing some, and I would basically just sat down and we did a bunch of vignettes for me. And wasn't, you know, I wasn't there yet, but I was just sort of starting to form like what would be the, you know, my sort of, you know, my own character, right? The National Treasure sort of character and everything. And the first guy that sort of, this was, I said 2016, 2017. So it was when there was that, people were talking about this sort of boom of the independents, right? Like, because Impact had kind of gone by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah.
And so now it was like Ring of Honor was almost sort of seen as the number 2. But now there was all these independents that were doing really well. Like, and one of them was House of Hardcore.
Yeah.
Dreamer. And Dreamer was like, yeah, you know, come in and we'll play these vignettes. And like, he put those vignettes on Twitch. He was like he was the first guy I knew of who was putting his wrestling shows on Twitch. You know, so he was super ahead of the game on that. And I remember he put my vignettes on the Twitch thing, and I remember seeing all the people in the thing going like, wow, this is cool. Like, you know, oh shit, like that's the guy from TNA. Like, this is way better. Oh, this shit. Like, where's this guy been the whole time? You know, and I was like, okay, like it's getting there. And then that was around the time that Billy called me and was like, I remember seeing a headline that he bought the NWA and just sort of being like, oh, okay, random. And then yeah, he pretty much called me and said, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to do a modern version of what the NWA used to stand for. Like, more kind of serious, gritty, kind of smash mouth wrestling, guys with size, promos, not interviews, not scripted sort of monologues. And I want to, he said, I welcome all styles of wrestling, but I kind of sick of seeing a bunch of guys who look like my next door neighbor do gymnastics with each other. And I was kind of like,
yeah,
all
great.
right. Well, there's something for everyone, and I'm not, I've worked with some incredible high flying guys. Like I had a match with Matt Cross, like on an independent show in Tennessee, where we tore the house down. Like, it's not about flips and dives and everything. It's not like I don't like that stuff. No. I don't like wrestling that doesn't look real. I don't like stuff that's unbelievable and silly, So it's not about the flips, It's like people get off on the wrong exit with that stuff. But anyway, so I said, all right, I didn't have anything else going on anyway, so I was just like, all right, shit, I'll give it a try. And at the time, I was really into. I said, well, look, so for what it's worth, I just bought 2 boxing pay-per-views back to back in a month. I bought Mayweather McGregor because it was like, I just was like, this is a spectacle, And I bought Canelo Triple G for totally different reasons, Because it was like Mayweather McGregor was all about like the bravado and just like the spectacle of it. And it's like, wow, the curiosity. And then, Canelo Triple G was like the way that they had sold that fight. HBO at its absolute best, just like, these are the 2 best guys, these are their stories, this is how they got to where they are today, and now they're going to fight. And it was like, all right, you've sold me, here's my money. And I sent Billy the HBO 24/7 on Canelo Triple G and the Showtime All Access on Mayweather McGregor, and said, I just bought these 2 pay-per-views back to back because of these. Why can't we do this in wrestling? And that's basically where the 10 Pounds of Gold series comes from. Was like, I said to Billy, you could go and hire a bunch of wrestlers and get a building and get a ring and get some lights and get a drink, but what's going to be different about it other than the name?
Yeah.
Or we can do it, make mini movies about one match, and just piggyback on someone else's show and just shoot that. Like,
even the stuff with like Tim Storm, like I'd never heard of him before the 10 Pounds Gold, and I just fell in love with his story. I loved him.
Right, and that's exactly the point, because they were, Billy was the one who said, well, before you say anything, he's like, I know that you've probably never heard of him, and he's, he's not some hot indie sensation, but he said, have a look at this Tim Storm. There's just something about him, because Billy at first was just going to strip all the existing titles and just kind of start again.
Yeah.
And he did that with all of them except the world title because of Tim, because he was just like, he did the same thing. He was like, man, this guy is so earnest and so real and so genuine. And sure enough, like, they shot some stuff with him and they sent it to me, and I was just like, wow, what a genuine baby face. Like, and right away, my mind starts going, yes, I can be the perfect antagonist to this, like, because it's all about it's about the story. It's not about the match, it's about like, so right away I was going, yes, like, I can be I'm younger, I'm more accomplished, I've done more stuff, like, I'm more well-known, and he's I'm a school teacher, and I'm
a family man, sort of. Yeah.
So right away there was just this brilliant contrast, and like, like, for the people that saw it, it resonated, and we were off to the races. And I knew things were going well when, within like 2 or 3 months of doing those, we hadn't even had a match yet. We'd just been doing these documentaries. We've just been doing 10 pounds of gold.
Yeah.
And right away, like Sam Roberts wants to talk to you. You know, Busted Open wants to talk. So all the like bigger sort of wrestling podcasts or radio shows and stuff, you know, suddenly they're like, oh, you know, hey, you know, Sam Roberts wants to talk to you, Busted Open, or, you know, all the sort of the bigger ones. And I'm just like going, huh, you know, and then like, I remember the first time I talked to Sam Roberts, he was just like, I wasn't expecting to be into this. And then I saw it and I was totally into it. And I was just like, well, thank you for your honesty. You know what I mean? Like, glad to hear it kind of. And it was just like, we just kind of, and really very quickly within a few months, you know, and then I beat Tim for the belt. So because we sort of go, okay, this is, you know, I had a lot of bookings, you know, independent bookings. And that's when I really knew that people were paying attention, because the second that I beat Tim in New Jersey.
Was that CCW at the show?
Yeah. The next day, some of them even that night. I remember we went to dinner. We all went to dinner, and my phone is just ping, 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 and it's all the promoters that I'm booked for in the next like 3 or 4 months. You know, I'm booked in like I just so happen to have bookings like all across the States, in Europe, even Australia.
You even got to China, like.
then the China thing. It's funny because the China thing had been on the books for a while. Like it had been like because I'd done some shows for Inoki in Japan, and they'd been talking about China then as far back as like 2016, and then again, sure enough, after I won the NWA title, you know, Inoki's like, NWA title match, you know, like, can we do that in China? And I'm like, yeah, like. How much, you know? But yeah, and so it was so funny because just by happenstance, we had this ability to be able to say the NWA title is going to be defended in the following places, like you know, so and so, Melbourne, Australia, London, England, so and so, England. Fucking, you know, China. And so suddenly people start going, wow, this is so cool. Like, he's like the old school, like, traveling champion. So it was just lucky how that worked out.
NWA Power, a show that has received very good reviews, has a strong following, even The Rock tweeted about it. I just basically want to know, how did that come by? And what's it like for you to basically be the star of the show?
Well, you know, obviously, you know, we do All In, and then we do the return match at NWA 70, and that's the first time where again, this is all part of the agreement. It was kind of like, okay, we'll do All In, and you know, obviously get all the benefit of that and whatnot, but we do the return match. It's our pay-per-view, like we're doing the show, right? And we set a box office record for Nashville Fairgrounds, and we do a really strong pay-per-view, and you know, it's a good way. And this is our chance to sort of go, okay, here's an NWA pay-per-view, right? Here's how we do it. And it was like gritty, and it was, you know, we had Tony Schiavone on the call, and you know, Cornette and Galley, and we had like some legends there. It was, you know, we were proud of that show. And then we would, off the back of All In, we had this great relationship with Ring of Honor. So now we were able to sort of work a lot of our angles through Ring of Honor, and obviously they've got incredible production values and stuff like that. So we're just kind of doing a lot of different stuff, but we're still kind of just doing the 10 pounds of gold stuff. So we're okay. After Cody, it's like, right, who's the next big opponent? All right, let's work towards me and Mai. We start, you know, we're kind of doing it like that because we still pretty much have a roster of one.
Yeah.
Like, you know, everyone else was just sort of booking like on a one-off basis. Then we do Crockett Cup, and again, you know, we smash it with Crockett Cup. Like, it's, you know, it gets, you know, crazy good reviews. You know, me and Mike tear the house down.
That match is amazing, by the way.
Thanks.
Just like like the blood you get, mate. Oh, and
yeah, and I'm, you know, very proud of that match, and just proud of the whole show. You know, it's just really well done. Another perfect example of like when everybody works together, because it was like that was a co-promotion between Ring of Honor and the NWA, and it was like everybody came out of that better. You know, there was no like, oh, our guy has to go over. You know, it was like everybody kind of went, yep, this is the right thing to do. But following that, prior to that, I had, you know, Billy had said right from the beginning he wanted to do a studio wrestling show. Like really, really early on, he'd said about that, and I'd kind of been like, oh, okay, and like, you know, but I was just sort of, it's one of those things where I'm sort of like, okay, well, just let me know when you want to do that, like, because I'm just fixated on trying to do whatever I've got in front of me. I want to make that good. So, but after the Crockett Cup, like now we really started to realize like we're getting a lot of attention now as a brand. So we're being considered in the same, you know, we're being now sort of, our names being thrown around now in the same vein as like Ring of Honor or Impact or whatever. So we're kind of like, okay, now we realized that it was only so long that people were going to just keep watching like the 10 pounds of gold to build up to like one match, you know? So that's when Billy pulled the trigger and said, okay, let's do it. And they found GPB in Atlanta. And, you know, I was pretty hands off for most of that to begin with. And then obviously once Billy sort of green lit the whole thing, then I started being more sort of, you know, I was being involved in more of the process. But to be honest, like once I saw the venue and I saw the concepts and I saw the, you know, the set design and stuff like that, I really, because obviously I was starting to watch a lot of old like Mid-Atlantic and Mid-South and Georgia Championship Wrestling and stuff like that, to kind of even like some old Houston wrestling and things like that, just sort of, because I was kind of like, this is what I want to do, you know, especially Mid-Atlantic, like the Mid-Atlantic, you know, TV tapings for me, which is, I loved that studio show. Like when you think of like all those iconic Flair promos and most of those iconic Dusty promos, they were Mid-Atlantic, you know.
Yeah, with the special background as well.
Right, Jim Crockett Promotions, yeah. And so it was like they you know, they hired this set designer and they just absolutely nailed, you know, like they were able to sort of encapsulate all of those different feels into like one, you know, and sort of bring it up to a sort of to the 21st century. And that's when I started to get really excited about it. And, you know, I know that Cornette obviously, you know, didn't stick around, and, you know, he had his whole thing, but, you know, Cornette was very instrumental in the beginning and a lot of that influence too. And, you know, people who were involved in it. And I just remember getting there that first day. And obviously, like, because of my position, I was very heavily involved leading up to it, but it was still kind of like we all showed up sort of going, well, I guess we'll see what it looks like when we get there, you know. And I just remember us all walking in, and I had my son with me, who did a run in earlier, and he was like 4 at the time. And because the tapings happened to fall on like a Monday and Tuesday, so Mickey was at Raw, so I had to bring him with me. So like he was running around, and like we had, you know, we've got his little room set up with all the toys and stuff. And Billy's like, yeah, sure, like, you know, bring his toys, and we'll get him his own room and all that. It was, I mean, you know, again, just like I said, you know, I have such affection for this company and for the GPB studios and stuff, for things like that, because they've sort of gone above and beyond for me because of, you know, the loyalty and stuff. But I just remember getting there. And like Rock and Roll Express are there, and Jim Cornette, and everyone from you know, so that's one end of the spectrum in terms of the level of experience and age. And then there's like brand new guys walking in who are like, you know, in their early 20s, and everyone's doing the same thing, and everyone's going, oh, whoa, you know, like when you first walk into that room, it's special. It's got a real special vibe.
It's awesome. I do love it.
That room is the whole mood. You know what I mean? Like we would do these like high end, like, you know, VIP packages for fans and stuff, and they all would just come in and just go like, oh, like, wow, you know. And I think for me, I started everyone, you know, you see everyone coming in, and it was great even this last time when we went down for these last tapings, you know, after we'd been away for a year.
Yeah.
You know, I had that same feeling, but now I'm seeing all these other people who had seen the show and were now going like, man, I want to be on that show. And now they're walking in, and you can see them all walking up to the podium and being like,
having a little play around.
Hell yeah, like, man, I can't wait, you know, like I can't wait to cut a promo here. Because it just brings out a different sort of promo in you, you know, and it's just that was a situation where I was, you know, obviously I was involved in some of the booking and stuff, you know, with my stuff. So it was like I said, you know, when it was sort of presented to me, like we thought it'd be cool to sort of do like a full circle thing where it's you and Tim, you know, to sort of go right back to where it all started.
Oh, what last chance match? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, hell yeah, like, you know, and I mean, dude, Tim Storm, like, what a performance. Like, it was that day, that first episode of Power, I would probably say is my best overall performance as a pro wrestler. Like, from the promo and the match, you know what I'm saying? Like, just from the whole, like, from the whole thing. Like, as far as, like, obviously, you know, like, I've had better matches,
but everything you've sort of built up to it, like, you're involved with the end.
But also, but nothing that was more important than that, in the sense of, like, people were going to give us one chance with that show, and it had to work. And so the first interview you see on that show is me, and it's kind of like, okay, you're the guy that we've sort of built this whole thing around. And, you know, Billy was like, go out there and say whatever the fuck you want and set the table. You know what I mean? Go out and set the tone. And, you know, that promo was like, you know, obviously is quoted a lot, and people, you know, like to bring it up, and you know, it means a lot to me. But it was, you know, it was that situation where I was like, okay, there's pressure here, but it's good pressure. And it was my way of sort of, because I knew that show was going to get a lot of eyeballs from the industry. And in a way, it was sort of my way of showing everybody, like at WWE, the guys who had kind of written me off from Impact, you know, anyone who had turned me down, you know, no, it wasn't a chip on my shoulder thing, but it was just this way of being like, I'm here to fucking stay, right? Yeah. Like, this is who I am, you know, and
this is my brand.
Yeah, and this is right, and this is what this is our show, you know, and like, we're gonna make this shit work. And it was, you know, and it set the tone for everybody else. I mean, there were guys there who have been around a long time, or guys who had kind of been in the business and then sort of, you know, fallen out of the business, like Trevor Murdoch and guys like that. And you could just see them all by the end of that first day. They were just like, fuck yeah. Like, and now they're just, you know, Trevor is so all in on this company.
Yep.
You know, Aaron Stevens, so all in on the company, like Pope, you know, like.
So happy to see Pope back as a wrestler now.
Dude.
So good.
Untouchable promo. Untouchable. That's what we try to stand out as. Like, the one thing you will never see on NWA Power, you will never see an episode without at least one promo where you go, oh, that was a good promo. You know, I'm not saying every single one's going to be a 10 out of 10, but overall you're going to, you know, that there's going to be some high quality interviews.
Because I do feel like promos had, well, prior to NWA, just in general, the last few years, have become a bit of a lost art. And I think people do genuinely forget how important it is to cut a good promo.
Yes.
Obviously, you got to sell the tickets. I mean, it's all good. You know, being good in the ring obviously helps.
Yeah.
But you know, but you got to talk the game as well. I mean, why do you think Conor McGregor, for example, is
everything, man?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad you said that, because it just reaffirms what I believe, which is like, nobody is saying that we want to go back to working a headlock for 5 minutes, right? I'm glad that the style has, I'm glad that the, you know, that the in-ring action has improved, you know, so drastically, you know, over time. Now, the psychology and the, you know, some of the, like, the actual, I guess, you know, choices that get made, maybe, you know, that's up for debate, and I'm not, you know, I'm not going to get into that.
No, that's fine.
But just overall execution,
Mm-hmm.
the quality of talent now is like, it's unbelievable. But to your point, promos have almost become this thing in a lot of places. They've almost become this thing that, like, you have to do, but you sort of suffer through them to get to the matches. And it's like, I never looked at it like that. I couldn't wait to see guys cut promos. That's what I wanted to see. I was always the other way when I was a fan. I was kind of, you know, until it was a pay-per-view, I was kind of, I want to see the promo. Like, when someone walked out and, you know, or an interview set or walked out to the ring with them, I was like, everybody shut up.
Like The Rock and Austin, just like, you know,
yeah, man.
They could be going against Val Venus, but they're building up to be the biggest match, you know, in the company.
You know, there was that time period between like 98 and 2001, 2002. Like, every episode of Raw would start, and you'd just be sitting there going, like, whose music's going to hit first? Is it Rock? Is it Austin? Is it Triple H? You know, like, who's it going to be? Boom, it's The Rock. Oh shit, here we go. You know, and it was because you wanted to hear him talk, and like, so a lot of the time, you know, when if you go back and look at, like, Mid-Atlantic, you know, Jim Crockett shows and stuff, a lot of the time, top of the show, like, okay, here comes the world champion, that's your boy Ric Flair, you know, and here he comes, because he's like, because, you know, that, hey, we gotta draw these people in. This is what they came to see, you know, and so yeah, that everyone. And the you can feel the vibe backstage at Power. Like, it's like, a lot of the time, the burden of the first promo goes to me, you know, as the champion, and it's like, you can feel like the pressure, but you can also feel the other people going, like, I want that first promo, you know. You can feel like Pope and, you know, Murdoch and guys like that who are going, like, fucking let me out there. You know what I mean? Like, all right, now I can't wait to get out
there's
there.
That competitive spirit as well, but in a good way.
Yeah. Well, and me and Eli were like that before Eli went to NXT. And, you know, that's what he and I were like every episode. He'd be like, we'd be sitting there with each other and, you know, like, all right, you know, out he goes. And I'd be sitting there at the monitor like, you motherfucker, you know, like, he'd say all this stuff and I'd be like, all right, you know, I'd come back and I'd do my promo and I'd come back and he'd be done, like, all right, you know, like, all right, I'm getting out.
Oh, it's like that now.
Yeah. Like, that's what you want. Yeah. Like, we'd have fun with it. It'd be like, all right, I see you, I raise you, you know, like, I'm gonna go out now, you know, I'm gonna go out and get my shit in. Like, that's the way it needs to be.
I like that, man. I will wrap this up, but I will have a few more questions. But it's just to go back to the promo ability. Just a few things, really. It's just the suits that you wear, always on point, and the way that you carry the title as well. And I don't necessarily mean, like, you know, one thing I'll copy from Bruce, I know, but not clickbait. But it's just one thing that I do have to bring up. He said it's how The Rock used to hold the belt and Austin used to hold the belt. And they used to drag it almost like it was, you know, just a prop, but you carry it like it's attached to you in a way, like you're.
I take care of it. Yeah. I treat it with
TLC, like you
prestige.
Yeah. Where does that? How did you come by that? Was that just sort of, you didn't really think about it too much, or was there like?
Flair used to do it, and Nick Bockwinkel. If you go back and I get compared to Bockwinkel quite a lot, which I obviously take as a huge compliment.
Yeah.
But both of those guys would do that. They're not the only ones, but they're the ones who I certainly thought of with it. And it just, to me, it just created that aura of like, this thing belongs to me, right? Like, this is a crown. That's the way I look. You know, it's a crown. That's a
really good way of putting it.
It's the prize.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate prize. So, you know, it's the Stanley Cup, it's the FA Cup, it's the Premier League trophy, it's the World Cup. Like, it's the, you have this, you don't, you know, like, you know, this is what we're all here for, right? Like, this is not, this is the thing. And like, it right now it belongs to me. So I'm going to hold it like an orb, you know, like this thing that holds this ultimate power. You know, and
it's a beautiful championship, mate. Honestly, it's
well, and you know, right from the beginning, I knew where the brand had been. I knew that no one gave a shit about the NWA. I knew that no one gave a shit about the NWA title, and like people were, oh, that's still a thing, you know. So I pretty much realized the only chance I'm going to have to get this thing over is to eat, sleep, breathe it 24/7 and commit. That's all it is. It's just to commit 100%. Like, what, right from the like, you think there were times where I didn't feel like a bit of a dick, sort of going to, you know, being in some like building with like 50 people and like walking in a fucking suit. Like, I didn't feel like a complete dickhead and didn't feel like I was being completely pretentious. But it was the only way, because you have to sort of, I pretty much understood that I'm going to have to build this thing one fan at a time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to have to win them over one at a time. If I go to, you know, Chesterfield and I wrestle in front of 100 people in this leisure center, I need at least half of those people to walk away going, you know what, that guy is something. You know, you know, well, the show was whatever, but that guy, he is something. You know, wow, he's, you know, and I had to do that. If you don't give a shit, they don't give a shit, right? If I'm not committed 100% to what I'm doing, why should you be committed to paying to see me?
Because in a way, you sort of had to, because we'd only known you as Magnus, as an audience. So this was really you being you. So that is absolutely spot on. So you had to sort of,
and the other thing we had was we were able to get the Houston Wrestling Library or access to it, so that we could at least find some footage of Flair, Dusty, you know, Harley.
Right in the 10,000 gold bits,
right. So that it did start reminding people, okay, yeah, it is the same belt, and you know what? He may not be as famous, right? He's, you know, obviously not as well known, but he walks like them, he talks like them, he dresses like them, he wrestles like that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and because, you know, I still see it now. You know, there's always going to be these old timers who are, oh, he's no Harley Race. No one's saying I am, you know, but I'm saying I want to be.
Yeah.
So, you know, do with that information what you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to recognize him, but at the same time, you're just saying you respect him, you know. And
well,
also,
what do you want me to say? Yeah, I'm happy to be kind of just, you know, someone. No, I'm the fucking man. You know, like, I'm in this to be the man. Like, I'm in this to be the number one guy in the industry.
And I think that's why you've been champion since October 21st, 2018. 900 days plus. I can't actually remember the specific amount, but you beat Cody again. So I know where, you know, we've had the pandemic and NWA is back on TV, Fight TV. So it's all good. So fans were getting very worried because the YouTube account disappeared. But
yeah.
it was, everyone sort
It
of
was
had
weird because I obviously knew, I obviously, sort of helped put the deal together, but I knew that, well, I say put the deal together, help make the connection, for between Fight and the NWA. And it's funny because I knew that the deal had been done. So like for those like 3 days, between the YouTube being pulled down and then like everything being switched over to Fight before the announcement and stuff, it was brutal because everyone, because I had to just sit there and like hold my tongue because everyone's like, "Oh, it's finished." It's no. And people would text me like, "What's going on?" Like Meltzer like DM'd me on Twitter and was like,
Did he?
The YouTube. I was like, relax.
Message me in 2.5 days.
Yeah, I just said it's all good. Like, it's all positive.
Nah, it's all good, man.
And he's the one going, well, where do you think this could go next? Like, who do you think could we see you wrestle? What about Cody? What about this? He was the one who was like, he could see it.
Planting the seeds all for the future.
Yeah, he was like, I mean, this could go as far as you want it to go, right? Like, you could. You're saying you defend the title against anyone. I'm like, anyone. And he's like, Marty Scurll, Cody, and I'm going like, hey, if they want, and next thing you know, it's like suddenly like All In is, on the horizon, and next thing you know, it's like Cody wants to talk, and I was all right, let's talk.
I mean, the All In thing was truly special. A truly special moment, a truly special match. And not just the match itself, but the build-up. Some of you mentioned just before about ordering fights, and you sort of had the weigh-ins, and it just felt like a fight, if you know what I mean. I knew it was like a wrestling match, but a big build, you're weighing up each other, and then like you both come out with like your camps.
Entourage,
Yeah, it was just... There's so much to it. I mean, the match itself. I mean, where does that rank in your all-time favorites? That match?
It's definitely top 5. It's hard to pick. I personally thought our match in Nashville was better than the one in Chicago.
Yeah,
but I understand that. For for the moment, like obviously you can't top All In. Like Chicago was the one. They're just that all happened really fast, but once we started getting into it, I could tell that me and Cody had similar philosophies, similar mentality, and it was very easy getting all that put together because a lot of the time we were on the same page with most stuff, and I was about business. I was like, this is the right piece of business to do. This is the moment. I knew that being involved with that would be a huge thing for me as much as it would be a huge thing for him. Right? Like it wasn't, I basically, from the beginning, I said, okay, he wants to win the title in Chicago, right? Like he wants the big moment. He wants the tears, the blood, right. I get it.
Yeah.
Like, everyone wants that. I get it. But here's what I need. You know what I mean? Like, in order for you to have that,
the build up. I loved it.
Well, it was like I need to be presented as like you're going to acknowledge me as like the man, because if you're going to beat me, then you need to tell everybody that I'm the man, right? Like that's and I mean that's a very simplistic way of putting it down, but that's business. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty much the business we did. It was like not. Look, I have great respect for Cody and the Bucks for what they were able to pull off. But I was also very protective of what I'd done with this, because I was like, this is, I'm getting another shot here. Do you know what I mean? To make something in myself. So I'm not just gonna come in and just hand it over, kind of thing, right? Like.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it wasn't like I was trying to be difficult. It was, honestly, it was like the easiest. It's funny because people always ask me about all that. Like, how did you get all that together? And I always say it came together really easily because I wanted the same thing that he did. Which was like we wanted to be the main event. We were the true main event of that show, right?
Yeah. Hard to argue that, to be honest. Oh, but the audio's gone a little bit. Hold on. Can you? Oh yeah, I can hear you now. That's all right. You're saying about being the true main event, and it went quiet then.
Yeah, look, we were the true main event of that show, and look, this isn't trying to throw shade at anyone, but when I think it's pretty safe to say that when you talk about that show, that's the match people talk about the most.
Yeah, it's the only match that actually had the build, in my opinion.
Right, and when you consider the fact that some of the biggest stars of our business were on the show, Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio Jr., it was like Okada, so it was like we did something, we did it right, we got something, and so we just I'll always be proud of that because it was so unique in the sense that it wasn't like a creative team, and it wasn't like somebody saying this is going to be the guy, like we're going to build to this thing, and it was like it all was organic. We all kind of knew what we wanted to achieve, and it needed the cooperation of like the NWA, of Ring of Honor, of Cody and me, and you know what I mean. It needed everybody had to sort of collaborate on that to make it work. It was not a sort of, okay, this is what the boss wants, right? It was like we achieved that all together.
Yeah.
And so to that point, it was like, all right, well, it's a unique accomplishment.